Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever this webinar may find you. And thank you for joining us on the webinar, 5 Tactics Revenue Managers Use to Maximize Revenue and Why. This is Jason Emanis. I am the Head of Marketing here at SHR, and I will be your host today. Speaking of SHR, in case you were unaware, we are the developer of the CRS distribution platform, Windsurfer CRS, as well as the feature-rich booking engine TopSell. We are here to keep independent hotels competitive, serving thousands, now in 68 countries, and we just opened a new office in Singapore last week, so look out Asia Pacific, here we come. If you are a branded hotel on the call today, that's okay, all are welcome. The tips we'll discuss will work for just about any hotel. On this webinar, we will be talking with 3 of SHR's area revenue managers. Yes, SHR provides hotels, branded and independents alike, revenue management for hire services. This auspicious panel has experience totaling over 40 years, and I am eager to introduce you to them. But because I am a hopeless marketer, I simply must know the pulse of the market. I feel compelled to ask our audience the question that is on my mind just about every single day. How happy are you with your CRS? Maybe you're using Windsurfer. Hopefully you're extremely happy. Either way, let me know how things are going. Now, while we wait for those results to come in, let me introduce you to our panel. First up is Nicole Adair. Hello, Nicole. Are you there?
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Nicole joined SHR in 2015 after working in corporate revenue management for 5 portfolio hotels across the mainland United States and Hawaii. As a certified revenue management executive, she has extensive experience in direct connectivity and channel interfacing initiatives for multiple CRS, PMS, and channel management platforms. Nicole is, again, a certified revenue management executive, holds a Bachelor of Arts in Russian, and is currently pursuing her Master of Science in Hospitality Management. Next, we have Mark Cohen. Hello, Mark, you there?
Yes, sir, I am here.
Mark joined the SHR Revenue Management team in 2014. During his 23-year career in the hospitality industry, Mark has held positions as Corporate Director of Revenue for 21 hotels and Regional Director of Revenue Optimization for over 700 hotels, as well as several operational positions at the property level. He has worked with multiple brands, including Hilton, IHG, Four Seasons, Starwood, and several independents. Mark holds a Bachelor of Science from the Conrad N. Hilton College of Hotel and Restaurant Management at the University of Houston. Finally, but not certainly least, is Teresa Stovall. Teresa, are you there?
I am. Hello.
Hello. Teresa joined SHR in 2010 with 25 years of industry experience in sales, e-commerce, and revenue generation roles, supporting over 60 hotels throughout her career. Prior to joining SHR, Teresa held vice president positions for LBA Hospitality and Sales, Marketing, Revenue Management, and e-commerce. She began her career in the hospitality industry at the Atlanta Marriott Marquis, and her career includes general manager positions for multiple hotels with Marriott International and Concord Hospitality. Teresa is a certified revenue management executive, graduated with a Bachelor of Business in Administration, Hospitality Administration from Georgia State University. So how did our polling go? Taking a look at the results now, and it's a little even there. About the same percentage of people are happy with their CRS as unhappy. Well, there's a lot not sure. Anyway, I appreciate your participation there. That helps me. I'll sleep better tonight. On a final note, let me encourage everyone to interact with our panel at any time throughout the call today. We will address as many questions as time allows. You can ask your question by typing in the questions box and click send. And don't forget, we will be sending out the recording of today's call to all the registrants of the event. Post-event, probably Monday, I would imagine. With that, let's get going. Nicole, let me ask you a question. What are hot topics in your revenue meetings when it comes to deploying availability restrictions? Which are the best to use for peak dates?
All right, thank you, Jason. I think a lot of times there tends to be a huge focus on singular rate codes or rate length when you're looking at peak and compressed dates. And you look at it and say, well, that rate is too low for this Saturday. I want to close that rate lane out. We would suggest instead really focusing on length of stay restrictions and managing your whole stay pattern, so you're not just maximizing revenue on your peak dates, but you're also making sure that you're getting everything you can on the shoulders as well. And this is especially effective on any opaque or prepaid non-refundable rate lanes that you may have, because you're not going to run any risk of early outs or losing any shoulder revenue that you're trying to go after by keeping those lanes open but restricted. So a good example I have from back in the day when Priceline was sending their reports that showed what reservations you missed out on. I had a property that missed two 21-night stays at an ADR of $80 because there was one Saturday where the decision had been made that, it's a really compressed market, we want rate, close it out. So for that one Saturday, we ended up missing about $4,000 in revenue when the other 20 days outside of that date all needed the occupancy. So it's really important to not get so focused on one date specifically that you forget the whole stay pattern that you're going after to maximize your shoulders.
Okay. Teresa, what about you? You have some experience here?
Sure. Yeah, I do. To piggyback on what Nicole said, I think it's really important that the front desk associate, particularly late at night, do not close out the total hotel from sales. So whereas, there's a couple of different issues. We could hard close rates, but we could also hard close the total hotel inventory. And, when we do that, it prevents all sales. And so even though we might just have a couple of rooms left to sell on the day of, we could get a phone call or an inquiry could come in at any time for longer term stays. And if we have a CTA restriction or the hotel is closed out, we would be turning that away when we might be willing to push it through and take it.
Okay. And Mark, you have some comments, I think, on franchise rewards, right?
Yeah, I do. A lot of hotels fall into the pitfall of only focusing on how much revenue they made one specific day rather than looking at a time period or a week. And when it comes to franchise rewards, hotels that do get incented on their franchise rewards, for example, a guest gets a $40 rate on a franchise reward. The franchise will actually make up the difference in ADR, provided the hotel gets to like 97 or 98% occupancy. And they'll focus more on getting their franchise rewards rather than looking at the total revenue of a week for the whole. It is certainly possible, if with the proper managing your stay patterns properly, that you may only get 95, 94% occupancy on your peak night, but you'll actually be able to increase your occupancy on your shoulders nights to the point where your franchise reward benefit is actually inconsequential, because you'll more than make up for it by lengthening out your stay patterns.
Okay, good. So how would you explain a minimum stay to a guest or guests who won't understand?
There's a few schools of thought on that. My personal opinion is when a guest calls to try to make a reservation for a particular night that has a minimum length of stay, I would just inform the guest, I'm sorry, we are fully committed for that day. I typically would not inform the guest, I'm sorry, we have a 3-night minimum on that particular day. A lot of guests are getting savvy. They'll say, okay, fine, I'll book it. And they'll stay one night and check out early. So you're looking for the guest that has those 3-night minimum, that has that 3-night requirement. And you put on that length of stay pattern restriction, you're your goal is to try to find 20 guests or 30 guests or however many it be that will want to stay 3 nights. You're not looking for the guest that wants to stay 1 night and force them to stay 3.
Okay, good explanation. So, revenue managers and general managers want to avoid having to drop rates to fill the last few rooms. How can we avoid this? Teresa, you've got some experience here?
Yeah, I do. I think one of the key components is, as a revenue manager, we need to really do our homework, and we need to do our homework looking a little further out into the future often. I think that, if we understand our rate and mix strategies from a systems standpoint well in advance, as far as, who's on the books so far, what are the segments that are reserving our rooms, then we're better able to establish our and change our strategy in place in order to achieve our optimum revenue performance to goals.
Okay. Teresa, we have a question from the audience. I'll just post it. If my competitors are reducing rates, how can I keep my hotel competitive?
Yeah, I think we have to have confidence in our product and in our service, and there are competitors out there that tend to not be as, I think, confident, and therefore they lose some rate integrity when they drop their rates. My personal opinion is, when we drop our rate, we lose integrity. We never know who that guest is that we've just issued a lower rate to, and the next time they call to make a reservation or go online, they may expect that lower rate, and it just puts us in a very awkward position that is a disadvantage, in my opinion, to securing the actual bar rate or regular rate that we have in place.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I don't think dropping is good.
I agree with that absolutely. It also comes down to understanding your place in the market. Are you the value hotel? Do you need to be going, bottom feeding to try and fill your rooms, or are you the rate leader? And walking around doing your SWOT analysis with your competitors will definitely tell you that. Also, which pool are you fishing in? You get to a certain point, you drop rates so low, you're no longer competing with hotels that may be in your comp set. You're now competing with hotels that may be in the comp set below you. You may be competing with a Motel 6 when you should be competing with the Hilton Garden Inns or the Courtyards, or even the Hyatts, and so on and so forth. So it has to do with finding your place in the market, making sure you're priced appropriately for the market, and don't get into the pitfall of chasing 1 or 2 hotels that might be in your market segment that are trying to steal share from hotels that may be below your market segment. Yeah.
Okay. Nicole, what do you think?
Right, and just to kind of, to reiterate what Mark said and Teresa had touched on as well, is that this is why it's so important that you have proper reporting in place, and that you're really looking, or rolling at least 3-6 months out, at least once a week on your revenue calls, so you see your pace, you know what your historical pace is, and you have a proper bar strategy in place that you can yield as you fill, so you build that base occupancy versus keeping your rates high. Maybe you forgot to load rates for 6 months out and they were too high, and then all of a sudden, you realize, oh, I need to get some fill because I was missing out on my share of the occupancy because my rate was too high. So it's really important, that you are looking months and months in the future on a weekly basis, and even, 52 to your 53rd week next year on a weekly or at least monthly basis, just to make sure that you always have your proper bar strategy in place from the get-go. Excuse me. One of the new things within the last couple of years that has really impacted this, I think, are all of the rise of mobile, all the mobile channels, and also a lot of these last-minute booking channels that have popped up that have made this tendency towards last-minute discounting a little bit more difficult to deal with. But they can also be a really important part of your strategy. So as long as you're maintaining your rate integrity across your booking engine OTAs, because you don't want guests canceling and rebooking at the last minute when you drop rate, like Teresa said. So you can keep your strategy in place and build your occupancy, and then you utilize some of these things like, Hotel Tonight or some of your mobile channel, even your own mobile channel through your CRS. And that way you do still have the flexibility to get some shorter term fill if you need it at the last minute, if you have some kind of crazy group drop off, or you just end up, something happening to your pace, you have some holes to fill. You do have these other channels that will still allow you to maintain great integrity across the big websites, Expedia, your own booking engine, and still get some of that last minute fill without having to impact your core bar strategy.
Okay, very good. Mark, let me ask you this question. How do most revenue managers strategize to raise average rate?
Well, something that differs here a little bit is a lot of hoteliers think that the best way to raise your ADR is, or the easiest way, of course, is to continue to raise your bar rate. My opinion is the easiest way to raise your bar rate is to change your mix of sales. You can actually lower your bar rate and increase your overall ADR by displacing lower rate of business. Appropriately managing and opening and closing different rate plans and different channels, and opening and closing different market segments is without a doubt the easiest way to raise your ADR. You can close out, make sure you're closing out your opaques first, your non-LRAs, and then get to a point making sure you're managing your blackout dates appropriately. You can actually continue to raise your ADR that way. But like I said, lowering your bar rate and displacing some of your low-rated business, including your last room available corporate rates, can certainly increase your ADR much quicker than you're just raising your bar rate. Because if you look at your overall market segments, your bar rates typically don't account for the majority of your business. A lot of times it's group or corporate rates, or depending on if you're franchise or not, it could be anything else.
Okay, we've got another question from the audience. So, Teresa, before I go to you to take Mark's comments a little further, let me ask all three of you this question. How do you work with sales managers to ensure a low-rated group is not displacing higher related transient?
That's a great question. Every group, in my opinion, regardless of the time of year, stay pattern, or what have you, every group needs to have a displacement analysis run against it. Where it's there are different forms. There are very, very basic ones to very, very in-depth ones. But at a minimum, a very basic displacement analysis needs to be run to find out if this particular group business makes sense for the hotel. And if it does, at what rate. Another thing you need to do is make sure you manage your attrition policies correctly, to where if a group does fall out, you're actually still getting paid for it and you're not displacing your guests. So we can go into displacement analysis a bit more if anybody would like to, but it is a process that takes probably 5 to 10 minutes per group. But that displacement analysis needs to be run, it needs to be printed out, it needs to be put in the file with each one of your group contracts. So to make sure that you're not displacing any business, and if you are displacing business, you're actually getting a higher return for that group than you would be if you just filled up with transient.
Right, and adding on to that, as far as the displacement analysis, I know sometimes in revenue we get so hung up on rate and on ADR that we forget that there's so many other pieces of revenue that can come along with a group, from your F&B and from your meeting space. And so, like Mark said, it's really important that you have some sort of displacement analysis process in place, whether you have software that does that or files that you use, however you do it, it takes into account the entire revenue picture, so that if your sales manager comes and says, well, this group really needs an $80 rate, you don't just say, no, that's too low. It may seem really low, but when you factor in all of that other revenue, that may be better business than what you're going to get on the transient side. So it's important to not get singularly focused on rate with your groups and really make sure that you're evaluating the entire piece of business.
Mm-hmm. And this is Teresa. I think it's really important to have a solid relationship between revenue manager and hotel sales team, so that door is always open for communication. And, I know for myself, I really love when the sales team will reach out to me and say, hey, can you help us with a break-even analysis and looking at displacement? And it's more of a team effort. But, ultimately, in my mind, the decision is at the property as to what rate to offer and what to take, because they're in the market and they know best. So I always defer to them in the very end, but I definitely want to share any thoughts that I have along the way with them and suggestions.
Okay, I have another question from the audience. Let's see. How can I be sure to sell the club rooms or suite room types rather than just upgrading guests from standard rooms?
Yeah.
Hey, this is
that's actually one of our.
I'll let Mark take
it.
it.
Go ahead, Nicole. Yeah, that's actually one of our questions for a little later on. Yeah, Nicole, go ahead and get started, and I'll finish up anything else.
So that's actually perfect timing, because the room types were one of the things I was wanting to touch on when it comes to ways other than just raising bar to raise your ADR. And that is really, really important, and it's always one of the first things that we look at whenever we're evaluating a property's rate strategy, is whether the different room types are being maximized. So appropriate differentials are really important, and your comp set is going to factor in pretty heavily here, because you don't want to be selling your king for the same as double if no one else in the area is, and vice versa. You don't want to be the only property out on the market that has the same lead in, and then all of a sudden your one room type jumps up $15, $20 and no one else does, because you're never going to sell that room type. So it's really important to analyze your comp set and see what everybody else is doing. And along with that, a lot of hotels you'll see seasonality or varying weekday, weekend demand by room type, and you really should be adjusting your differentials and your strategy, according to that as well. So if you're a bit of a destination and spring or summer break is coming up, you can and you should command a higher rate on your poolside room than you probably would during January, if you even do have an upcharge in January. Spring break, $25 more on that room, because it's going to be more in demand. So it's really important when you look at your pace and your demand to see which rooms are selling when. And then likewise, if you're a corporate-driven hotel, you can probably get more rate for a king versus a double during the week, but on the weekend, your demand shifts, and you may not be able to get a higher rate for that room type over another. So it's really important to keep that in mind when you're setting your strategy, because that can help you raise your rate overall as well. And I'll actually let Mark touch on the suites part and how to avoid upgrading and giving that away for free.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing that I do to piggyback on what Nicole said is, out of your PMS, you should be able to find the report saying what your ADR is by room type. Choose whatever date, time frame that you would like. If you want to do seasonality or for the whole year, what have you, and see what your ADR is by room type, and then from there match that up to what your premiums are. So let's say, for example, your standard room, your deluxe room is $20 more than your standard room. That's the rate that you charge for that particular room type. But on your ADR report, you're saying you may be getting a $4 to $5 premium for that deluxe room for the year. I've actually seen cases where it's the same, if not lower, than the standard room type. You might want to consider adjusting that premium from $20 maybe down to $15 or even $10. If you go to $10, you'll probably increase the ADR of that room type, even though you've dropped the price differential, because you'll get more guests actually paying for that room rather than buying a standard room and then giving comp upgrades at either at check-in or several days before, balancing the house, looking for checkerboard or straight line availability. So, yeah, lowering your room type differentials, and like what Nicole said, making sure you're priced appropriately on the comp set for those suites or those deluxe rooms, really will go a very, very long way to increasing your overall ADR and decreasing the amount of comp upgrades that you give.
Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of times, you know, like Mark said, if you do look at those ADRs and if you are ending up giving your high-rated rooms and your suites away most of the time, you're charging too much for them on top of the other rooms, unfortunately, and you need to take that rate down. Sometimes I know that's not possible, you know, for various reasons. There are expectations on suites and that kind of thing where you can't just lower the rate. And in those instances, it's really important that you put some thought and market research into, you know, what sort of amenities and add-ons you're offering with those room types to make sure that when you do have that premium rate on there, that it's worth it and it's something that's going to, you know, attract the guests and make it something that they want to book when they're paying that much more.
Yeah, and we have another audience question, and I think we've touched on this, but let me go ahead and ask it before we move forward. The question is, how much should I mark up the premium rooms? I don't know if you have any more comments on that.
This is Teresa. I think it depends on the type of hotel and the market that you're in, and like Nicole shared earlier, you have to be knowledgeable about, you know, what the going markup is among your competitors as well, to make sure you're not over or underpriced.
Right, and obviously you have to take into consideration any add-ons that you have. You don't want to be costing yourself money, right? So you need to cover any additional expense that comes with your premium rooms. But on top of that, it may take, you know, some experimenting and some tweaking. It's really just going to be kind of what the market will bear ultimately, and what you find that guests will actually book. And so, like I said, it may take some time to really settle in and find that differential that works for your property and for that room. But it's really going to vary from hotel to hotel and market to market, and just, you know, how premium your premium rooms are, you know, is going to play a lot in what you can do there. So it's really something that is individual and that you have to experiment with a little bit.
Okay, there's another question that popped in. What added value amenities sell best to offer in upgraded rooms? Anyone?
Champagne and strawberries always works for the guy who's trying to make up with his girlfriend or did something wrong. That always works just fine. You know, the bed and breakfast packages always do well for the you know, the business traveler that gets a certain per diem for food and doesn't want to have to expense their breakfast. That one works well. But, you know, if you look at your total added on revenue for a year for add-ons, amenities, and things of that nature, it's going to be a pretty low percentage unless you're in a resort destination. Then you can really start moving that needle north. But I don't know what else works.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts on this, Jason. This is Teresa. I think that, you know, versus looking at add-ons for just the premium room, you know, maybe we look at value adds for all of the rooms. And, you know, when we're thinking about how can we leverage a little bit more in from a price point standpoint, there are some things that you could tack on to any room type, such as late checkout, kids meals, gift cards, breakfast, you know, a beverage if you have a lounge, and so I don't think it really has to just be the premiums.
Sure.
Right, and just, sorry, this is Nicole, to echo what Mark had said. depending on the certain traveler you're going after and the market, the traditional things that are really going to work for corporate travelers are going to have a rate or a room that's going to include their breakfast, parking probably. If you have different tiers of Wi-Fi or internet access, obviously the top tier for your corporate travelers, that kind of thing is really what they're going to be looking for their room. And then, I found as far as leisure travelers and family, like Teresa mentioned, late checkout, huge. If you can swing it, you can put minimum stays on that kind of stuff too, depending on the functionality of your CRS. If you want to offer an add-on of late checkout, but it has to have a 2-night stay, because you only want on your Sunday checkout, great. That's fabulous for families that are traveling. And that's something that people look for. Breakfast works for everyone. That really is the biggie, I think. Breakfast and the late checkout for your leisure travelers, and then parking and just any sort of added business amenities with for your corporate people during the week. And then club access if you have stuff like that at your hotel.
Now we've got some questions rolling in here. And maybe we touched on this. What value adds would you recommend for resort destinations?
I would say any of the above, and depending on what type of resort destination it is, if there's some type of outdoor activity that you can partner with, another venue in your area, that would be fantastic, whether it's skiing or boating, kayaking, anything like that is really cool. But not, if you're in a resort area, not everyone does when they travel. They're specifically going for a unique experience.
Yeah.
Right.
I've been in resort areas as well. One specifically in Northern California in Napa Valley. And I actually created a package that included balloon rides and Napa Valley wine train, limousine for the entire weekend. This was not a particularly high-priced property either. The package, I think, wound up being around $1,400 a night. I didn't expect to sell any of them. My hope was to increase my search engine optimization so I could get more. So if somebody searched for Napa Valley wine train hotels, for example, that we would show up. But to my surprise, I sold a lot of them. So that's definitely something as well. Having some wonderfully big, extravagant package definitely works. It has worked for me in the past. Now, from a customer service standpoint, it does require a lot of work to make sure it's priced appropriately so it makes it worth it. But, to Teresa's point, it also completely depends on, if you're a golf resort, I'm sure, you've got to have a golf package, which might include a couple of shirts or what have you, or limousine. I don't know. The sky's the limit when it comes to packages for resorts. Just get as creative as you possibly can is my suggestion.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. And just so kind of the overarching, message I would have if you're talking a destination or a resort is that you want the whole process, the booking, everything should be as little work for your guest as possible. So anything when you're thinking about it, that you can offer as an inclusion, park tickets if you're, a Disney property or something like that, park tickets, lift tickets, excursions, breakfast, transportation, just anything like that is just going to make it more attractive to the guests because it allows them to just enjoy their vacation and it takes the work out of it for them. And so that, I would focus on all of that.
Let me ask you another audience question, a little different twist here. We have an all-suite condo hotel with fully equipped kitchen and living spaces, and we are competing in a market of normal hotel rooms. Any suggestions on how to drive ADR when our product is so different?
So this is Nicole. I'll speak to that because a lot of the properties actually when my company, when I was working in Hawaii, were all condo, all suite like that. And again, kind of just touching on making stuff easier for the guests and in a way that the hotel can't really do, we would offer grocery shopping service or fridge stocking service for the guests before they even got there. Not really at any kind of upcharge to us, just as a convenience for the guests, so that they could take advantage of all of those amenities that the hotels don't have for them. they're probably staying there for longer. And it's just really handy for the guests. And it's in your marketing side too, but just really promoting everything that you offer that those hotels in your destination do not, the ability to cook. You probably have laundry on site, the size, the comfort, away from home, that kind of thing that will help you get some rate. And then just making sure that you're targeting the right market, because a lot of times you're not going to have the exact same market for, a condo property like that you may for a hotel. So, targeting families, leisure travelers, that kind of thing, extended stay even for business, but just really playing up all those comforts and amenities that only you can offer in that market that none of your hotel competitors can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I actually think. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Competing with the other hotels is, of course, one thing, but you do have all of those additional amenities for your guests. So I think even the bigger question is trying to find those guests that are looking for those amenities. That was the reason that the hotel was originally built, was to cater to those specific guests. So the question is finding those guests, advertising to those guests, and getting those guests in your hotel. If the market has changed to the point where there is no longer the kind of demand for those types of guests in your market, but you're still, of course, you still got a business to run. You're a for-profit organization, of course. You are now competing with hotels that don't have those amenities. All you can do at that point is I would compete directly with them on rate, maybe a smaller percentage on rate, and I would go for more RevPAR and use those amenities as a way to take share from our competitors, not necessarily ADR.
Okay, I got a couple more questions, and I don't want to leave these behind. Could you give us examples of when your minimum stay worked perfectly and when it failed?
Cool. I'll take that. I did have that example earlier, where that one day of having closeout versus the minimum stay prevented us from getting some revenue, but also if you don't have a long enough minimum stay, that's always going to cause a failure. So if you have a Saturday or any given day, depending on your market, that is just commanding an extremely, extremely high rate, and say you have a rate lane that's, 30% off of that, and normally you would just put a 3-night stay and be willing to take that revenue, you can still end up losing money if you're not really doing your math and paying attention to what you're netting out when you lose, 30, 40%, whatever, on that really peak day. So I have seen that happen where the minimum stays were kind of forgot. They were, set it and forget it, and something didn't get closed out when it really should have been, because it was just such an anomaly on that one day. But for the most part, and it almost is kind of like doing a displacement analysis with your group. You're going to have success when you look at, if I offer this discount for 4 nights, and you may not pick anything up, and that's fine. That's going to be the same net effect as just closing it out. But, you look at that discount, and over the 4 nights, are you going to be making more revenue than if you didn't get that reservation and took 1 bar rate of reservation on the date that you wanted to close it out? And that's really, really the question that you need to be asking when you're looking at it. And, in general, when you run your numbers that way, you're going to be successful with that. You're not going to end up costing yourself any revenue anyway, and hopefully get some incremental on your shoulders.
Okay. I want to get to question, our webinar question number 4, but before I do, maybe, kind of a rapid fire answer on this audience question. What are some incentives, advice you can give to promote holiday room sales? Real quick.
Well, I think that you have to look. Sorry, it's Teresa. If like right now, we need to be looking at Thanksgiving and Christmas now. And if your regular bar rate is in place at a higher level and you're very, very slow in your marketplace during that time, now would be the time to set your new strategy in place so that you are selling rooms further in advance for those holidays and capturing the people that look 60 days in advance to book their rooms, not 2 weeks prior.
That's absolutely right. Or even start looking at your strategy for next year. There is not much demand, of course, for holidays in a lot of markets, unless, of course, you're in Florida or something like that. So making sure you're open for next year, capturing every single possible room you can, certainly helps out. Marketing locally helps out a lot as well. Trying to beat grandma's extra bedroom certainly helps quite a bit. And so marketing locally and being bookable for as long out as possible will certainly help. And then groups, trying to find. They are hard to find, but they are out there. Groups that want to stay over the holidays. I found them before, and I certainly kept their phone numbers whenever I did find them. For on 27th of December in downtown Houston, good luck to you. That's about it. But making sure you capture every possible room you can, so be open as long as you possibly can, and marketing locally are the two biggest things I found that work.
Yeah, and depending upon your market as well and where you're located, that may be an opportunity to shift your marketing focus towards some international business that may not be experiencing a holiday on that weekend, where you may be able to play around with some strategy there to drive a little bit more of the market towards your property, because you may just not be able to get it domestically or locally, unfortunately.
Okay, very good. That's all good. All right, we're going to move on. How should we be using opaque channels, and when should a hotel consider using them? Mark, why don't we start with you?
There's a lot of different philosophies on this. I'll go ahead and give you mine on how I manage opaque channels. First of all, it comes down to forecasting. You forecast on a weekly basis, I'm hoping. And whenever you do your forecast, forecasting current month and next 2 months or next 3 months or what have you, after you've completed your forecast, you go through every day where you're not forecasting the fill out, and then you load rates for those specific days. You either do on your extranet if you're trying to save a few bucks, or on your CRS or PMS or wherever you want to load them. And then when you're loading your rates and your allotments, you do it day by day. You don't just load a blanket $67 rate for the next 3 months. Every day needs to have a specific rate. You can search those days on Hotwire, for example, and see what other 4-star hotels in your area are charging. Back out 15 to 17%, and then load that rate for that particular day. You're not really worried about rate as much as occupancy, of course, when you're doing opaque rates. So the rate, as long as it's above your threshold to covering your costs and making a few bucks in your pocket, it's really kind of inconsequential. You want to get as most as you possibly can, but still want to be displaying on those opaques. Now, the opaques, of course, do have their pitfalls. The quality of the guest possibly is not what you would want, and they can certainly hurt you on your customer service score. So be careful with opaques. But if you do want to go down that route, that is how I recommend doing it. If you do want to go the route of loading it as a percentage off of your bar rate and just leaving it open for everyone to book and kind of set it and forget it, that is a possibility. You can go that route. You won't get as much business from your opaques that way, and you have to be very, very careful to close out your opaque rates anytime that the market is starting to fill, not just your hotel. But if the market is starting to sell out, you got to close out those opaque rates, because then you'll start taking them, even though the rate may be a little higher, because your bar rate has been raised. You're still selling probably 40% off of your bar rate. And why would you want to sell 40% off of your bar rate week, and you could sell the same room to a guest who's willing to pay full rate? So if you're going to do the set and forget, make sure and close out those rates any day where you think there's a possible chance in hell that you're going to sell out.
Okay, Mark. Teresa, what about you? You got some thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. Any time a hotel has a deficit in their transient occupancy category, I think that considering opaque channels would be an option to really discuss, because it is a way that you can build incremental revenue fairly quickly. Like Mark said, you just really have to have the controls in place to monitor it so it doesn't get away from you.
Right, and this is Nicole, so kind of touching on what both Mark and Teresa had said. I would always argue that if you have rooms to sell, you need all of your channels open. I love using the opaques strategically, but they are a great channel. I would actually categorically be against setting it as a percentage off and then closing it. Let me add a caveat for that. This is much easier if you're an independent. I know this is not something that is quite so doable with some of the brand systems, but assuming you have, a fairly flexible CRS and, you are familiar with how to override and, do some stuff on your rates, take advantage of the opacity and the flexibility that you have with these channels and really kind of bend them to what your property needs. So if you have enough availability that you're still selling on Expedia, and if you're lucky, I don't know, you have a 15–18% margin, but we'll just say that it's 20, why would you not have a rate loaded on Priceline or Hotwire that's 10% off of your bar? I would rather take that one than take a bar reservation on Expedia, because it's going to net me more money. So, just making sure that you look at it from that standpoint of the flexibility it offers you, because you can basically set your own margin and try not to close them out. And this also allows stay-throughs like we were touching on earlier. So if you have your one rate lane on Priceline and your Friday's dead, you're taking whatever you can get on Friday. You can leave your Saturday open on Priceline, put it $10, $15 lower than your bar. It's still going to get you more money than Expedia. Minimum stay on it. And then see if you can't pick up some business that someone was looking for that two-nighter, and it will help you get some fill on your shoulders as well. So again, I would kind of, just from a displacement standpoint, just really take into consideration how much you can play around on that opaque or that package side, and then use it to your advantage.
Okay. We have a few questions, but what I want to do is I want to go to our number 5, and then we'll circle back. We're starting to run out of time here, but we got plenty to get to. I think our next question, and then probably most of the audience questions. So let me ask the panel this: OTA market managers like to run promotions. When does it make sense to run OTA promotions, and what about rate parity?
Yeah, I'll take this one. First of all, OTA promotions are an absolutely wonderful way to affect short-term business. Of course, the correct answer is not needing to run those promotions, because a year or 6 months out, you've noticed a weakening period, and you've already done things that aren't as expensive in order to affect that time period. But let's say, and we all have slow weeks, everybody does, or slow months, or months that your year-over-year group isn't really what it needs to be. So you have to run these promotions, and it happens to everybody, of course. You can really book a ton of business through them. What I would make sure you do is, whenever you're running that promotion on Expedia, please make sure to run the exact same promotion on Booking.com, on the Priceline Merchant, and absolutely on your own website. Why would you want to offer a rate cheaper on Expedia than you are offering on your own website? A lot of hotels do just run those specials on a specific OTA without running it on their own website, and that's when you get into rate parity issues. That way, you're pushing guests away from your website and making them more loyal to Expedia or Booking.com, and not loyal to yourself. So it may be more difficult. It may be a process for you to load those additional promotions on the other channels, but it is absolutely worth it. And go ahead and email, if you have your own email databases, which I highly recommend you have, and managing those email databases, go ahead and send an email out to your database saying you're running a promotion for those specific days, and try and push many guests possible to your own website, which is, of course, your cheapest booking channel, rather than paying Expedia their 18 to 25% or whatever your margin is set up at. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else got some comments?
This is Teresa. I would just say, it really depends on the type of hotel that you have, and whether you're a branded property or an independent property makes a big difference. With branded, there seems to be more controls that are in place as it relates to running promotions on third-party channels, and obviously we want to make as much money as possible, and in order to do that, it's best if we absorb that business through our own sources, whether it's the website or your branded channel versus a third-party source.
Right, and this is also another good opportunity to take advantage of any value adds, especially ones that don't cost you a whole lot of money. If you already have a breakfast buffet, it's really not that much for you to offer that to an additional guest. So when you do some of these promotions on all these channels, add some value adds to the one that you have on your own. So you're selling it at the same rate, but if you book through our website, you get free parking or you get breakfast, and you don't get that if you're booking it from Expedia or from Booking.com. And then make sure and promote that, like Mark said, via email, throw it up on your Facebook, your Twitter, just kind of get that out there so that you're maintaining parity, but you still have the most attractive offer for your own property. And then when it comes to just keeping the peace with your OTA partners, which realistically at this point you just want to keep Expedia and Priceline/Booking.com happy. You do have other channels. You don't have to do it on the main Expedia.com or Priceline.com. You can use your paid channels, your package pass. You can utilize some geo-targeting functionality. So maybe depending on the area of the country, you want to just do a specific sale to Expedia.ca, and that's probably not going to come up on your parity shop that your market managers here run, or to Expedia in Mexico or Despegar or things like that. So just don't forget about your OTA promotional channels outside of those two big ones, because what you don't want to do is have a snowball effect where your attempt to increase business on one channel lead to a drop in store order and production on another, because then it's just kind of a net zero, and there's really no point in taking those lower rates in the first place. So just focusing on value adds for your direct versions of the promotion, and then just making sure you explore all of those different avenues of OTA promotions, and asking your market managers about them, because they don't necessarily always bring those up to you, but they are there.
Very good. Okay, so we have about 7 minutes left, and we have a handful of questions, so I'm just going to rattle off some questions for you guys. Let me start with, how much impact would you say the U.S. elections has on a resort's booking pace?
Is it a Trump resort? I think it's impacting everyone, right? I think it's impacting everyone a little bit right now. I just was on a call today. I work with a property in the Orlando area, and I was on a call with one of our market managers, and they are definitely seeing a huge year-over-year drop in pace for December that we're attributing primarily to just people waiting to see how the election goes, and then, making their travel plans for December and Q1 once that is kind of sorted out. So it's definitely having some impact, especially for higher rated leisure travel, that's more of a luxury kind of thing, that people are definitely holding off, want to see how the election shakes out, what the impacts are on the market, and just kind of, how it filters out through everything. And it is impacting pace. I'm seeing it in quite a few of my markets.
Yeah. What I would challenge everybody on the call to do is to look at what your pace was and what your occupancy and revenue levels were the last election year and the one prior to that, if you have those numbers. And I feel fairly certain that everybody will find that hotel business does pretty darn poorly the year around an election time and the year after the election time. Also, if you look at everybody's PKF reports, and when the PKF report came out like 2 weeks ago, 2017, it's not going to be nearly as bad as 2009. I don't think we'll ever get to those levels again, but it is certainly not going to be a banner year in the hotel business. Occupancy levels will probably dip, 2% ADR probably lift around 2. So it should be fairly flat 2016 if you manage it appropriately and if you're ahead of the game. If you're not, your competitors will eat your lunch, and next year will be pretty rough.
Okay, here's another question. In the case of an exclusive offer with an OTA, how would you get around offering the same promotion on your website if it is supposed to be, for instance, an Expedia exclusive?
So this is Nicole. The way I would do that,
yeah, go ahead.
and this is speaking more from an independent standpoint than from a branded standpoint, depending on your flexibility. You always have the option with your booking path and any links to put it behind a promo code. And so it may not be something that you just, if it's publicly available on the OTA, it needs to be publicly available on your website. But if it's a special offer that you're doing, say for Expedia members or something like that, this is where, Mark mentioned having your own email database is so important, because you just build out your own offer, have it behind a promo code, and you can still promote it on Facebook. You can send it out via email, but it's only going to go to those people that are following you and paying attention, and they can only access it behind that code. So it's not going to be publicly available, and it's not going to be noticeable and out there and violating that rate that or that offer that you also have on the other channels.
Okay. Here's another Expedia question. Expedia is my top producing account. How can I maintain production if I'm not running promotions or advertising?
Well, if you're already doing promotions, or if you're doing advertising, don't really need to do promotions. If you're doing promotions, don't really need to do advertising. As long as you're when you're doing your own searches, you're coming up in the top 2 or 3, then you may not need to do any either one of them. Both Expedia and Booking.com, they list hotels by who has the most amount of production. The first hotel or 2, of course, is Expedia travel ads. But after that, if you're the first or second hotel after that, you probably don't need to do any promotions or advertising. If you start dropping, then of course you would want to bump it up again. But the Expedia travel ads, I buy it for almost all of my hotels. There's only a couple of them that I don't, and the reason why I don't there is because I'm already getting wonderful placement, wonderful production, and I don't need to throw any more money at it. But for hotels that aren't getting that kind of production, absolutely I do it, and absolutely I will continue to do it and continue to run my promotions.
All right,
right, so I don't think that definitely the lesson is not don't run promotions on Expedia. It's more just make sure that you are at least offering it on your own channel as well, so you're not incentivizing guests that may be looking at both to go to Expedia. We're definitely not saying don't do promotions on Expedia, because they can be very effective. We just want to make sure that you're not driving potential customers in that direction that may have otherwise booked on your site.
Okay, very good. All right, guys, we're at the top of the hour again, and I really appreciate your participation. I think that's some really good input, so give yourselves a hand. Thank you to all our attendees, and again, the recording will be going out. There's a couple of questions that we didn't get to, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to forward those to our panelists, and you can expect an email, maybe Monday or Tuesday. They'll circle back with you just to make sure that we covered your question. And with that, I think we're good. And again, thanks for everyone, and have a great weekend.